Well, Ray, you had also mentioned in your days just some great learnings and some management meetings, and at Microsoft, I think specifically too. Would love to hear you share that with us, because I think it applies to a lot of what we've all been through. So.
Yeah, there's nothing funner than going into an executive presentation at Microsoft and being called out.
Nothing.
But yeah, so I was given an update on where we were with several different things, and I'm a big extrovert and super positive kind of guy and everything. So here I am, and I'm want to make sure I'm showcasing the work of the team as well, because that's really important at Microsoft. And so I go through and present where we are, and the head of the division goes, "Okay, is that all I'm going to get?" And I went, "Well, what else would you like to hear about?" And he goes, "Well, all you've told me is things that are going well. What's going wrong?" And I said, "Well, are you taking care of the things that are not going so well?" And I said, "Well, absolutely." I said, "If you want to know what's not going well, ask me." And he goes, "Well, I shouldn't have to. I want to know what's going good and what's going not so good, because that's going to build your credibility in this company. I shouldn't have to ask." And so learning that years ago, early on, was a great lesson to show that balance of, hey, this is great, things are going well, and hey, I'm going to self-promote my team, and and even though you have tons of things that you are taking care of, if you don't bring them forth and show it from a balanced standpoint, you have a tendency to not be as credible. So I'm glad I got that early on in my career, but not in the broad group that I was in at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, that was a really good lesson learned for me too, because I mean, it was ugly. Microsoft, I wouldn't go back. They couldn't pay me enough to go back, but it was a great experience, and I learned. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't the stuff I learned at Microsoft, really, and. But it does make me think, like when we're doing leadership meetings now, I make sure that there's a balance. Like, here's what's going right, here's what's going wrong, or here's what I need help with. Not even what's going wrong. Like, I need another team to help me. And I've asked them, but I want management to know that, like, this isn't just Ray and Paula's show. Like, we've got the whole marketing department, whole team, whole everybody is all on board to make this stuff happen. And I think sometimes people just come in and, do the positive of what's going on, and they don't point out the negatives. And I think you do lose credibility, or people think you don't know what you're doing. Like, there's all these problems and you're not talking about them. And why are we on this call? I don't want to talk about the good stuff. And I think that's a lesson you learn the hard way.
Yeah. I mean, we learn through our failures, right? So if everything is peachy keen all the time, I mean, that's not, and it's just not realistic, right? I mean, we know that shit's happening, and that's where we're learning and iterating and making our marketing better, or anything in life. So,
well, that's what's great about this podcast, is that you guys are highlighting that stuff.
Yeah, some people are more forthcoming than others. We're glad that you guys were ready to jump in and talk about all the things. So I wanted to talk a little bit about really enhancing the customer experience, right? And Ray, I know you had some really intentional initiatives around life cycle, and making sure that you understood the journey and then operationalizing that. And I think as marketers, I mean, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge in making sure not only do you understand it, but that you're operationalizing it in a way that is effective, given the resource challenge teams that we all operate in. So, maybe if you could expand a little bit on your experience there, and not necessarily looking for failures, but maybe from what you learned along the way, that our audience might get some benefit from.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a big believer in moments of truth, so to speak. Those kind of engagement points where along the customer journey, when the customer is making a key decision or forming a key impression about your company, and being intentional and planning around those moments of truth, so to speak, and being intentional about what you want that experience to be and what you want to deliver. And I think not only is it important from like demand gen, which is what I'm really focused on at Axway, but it's along the whole life cycle, especially as that there's so much of us that are in subscription type of models. If you're just trying to get somebody in the door, then you're gonna get that leaky bucket out the back door. You're spending so much to get them on board. So at several companies, I've taken a life cycle management approach, and that is, really pivoting on that awareness and discovery phase, that demand gen, and that onboarding phase, and that retention, grow, and reactivation or win back, depending on the subscription model. Mm-hmm. But you got to be very precise on where one stage ends and the other begins. And I like putting a senior marketer in charge of each of those stages to really champion the experience of the customer across all the different stakeholders. And that is not only the marketing touch points that they're primarily focused on, but they're calling out what's wrong with the product in that stage. What do we need from a customer service standpoint that we're not delivering from a service standpoint? So that obsesses about that stage and the metrics that are aligned with that stage. For example, at a company like that has a platform, acquisition may end the minute that somebody signs up and enters their credit. Then boom, it goes into an onboarding stage, depending on your business model. But within each of the life cycles, there's a host of cohorts based on how they're behaving at that stage, how they're using the product, and you can analyze that and develop programming to ensure that it's more sticky. And we find it out the hard way sometimes. So I was at TeamViewer or at Bing as well, where we both had platforms that you had to sign up. If you build in these triggers of behaviors, you can once they've signed up, you can mitigate the churn. Gosh, were they logging in a lot, and all of a sudden they are not? Did that? And gosh, they're 6 months out from a renewal. What are you going to do from renewal date back 9 months to make sure you're analyzing and mitigating churn? But the onboarding piece, one thing at Bing, when Paula and I was there, was a big thing for us, because we were small, mid-sized businesses. So once you signed up, that first 60-day period was, we'd give $100 to join the platform and try it out. But if their experience in that first 15 days and that first 30 days was so critical for us to get them to, after the on day 61, move into the retention and growth phase. And I tell you, on a side note of that, is just when you pivot on the customer experience and frame the issues and challenges from the perspective of the customer in that way, it's so much easier to navigate those personal egos that are so prevalent, especially in the bigger companies and corporate communities, about who's right and whose budget it's coming from and resourcing. And when you're focusing it on the customer, it really takes that ego out of it, and you're all trying to make it better, make that experience better. And that was a big lessons learned, and one of the more effective ways that I've been able to get shit done.
I agree. And honestly, I agree. I think when I first started at Bang, the way Ray had it set up with the life cycle, I ended up owning a lot of the life cycles, which was fine. But I think the key in setting up life cycle is the team has to be really close, because you got to remember somebody's working on this section and they're writing everything, they're messaging, they're doing everything. And then all of a sudden it goes to onboarding and it's like you're in a whole different company. Like these people all of a sudden made it like, balloons and bubbles, and over here they were like, so it took us a long time to get our team to be like, especially globally, like, okay, this is who's onboarding. This is the message in, EMEA. This is what it looks like in APAC. Now onboarding has to pick it up and continue that message, that same tone, that same everything. And that's really hard, especially when all of a sudden you're working with like an engineering team or a customer service team that's onboarding, and they don't talk to our customer like they're a customer. They don't even look to see that this person has been a customer for 8 years. And, and
blindfolds,
so
right?
They're just doing their job. Yeah. Somebody called, they picked up the phone. They don't care who they are. They talk to them exactly the same way, and I think that that's even a problem that we see today at the company that we're currently at. It's like, what do we do along this life cycle? And Ray just drilled into me life cycle. So I'm like, great, we've got acquisition, but how do they get onboarded? Who touches them? What do those messages look like? How are we going to retain and grow them? And who's responsible for that? Who's touching that? Mm-hmm. And what does that message look like? What does that experience look like for somebody along this journey? Because we do have a subscription model now. So when are they being touched? Who are the sales guys? Do they know their customers and how long they've been customers and the tools they have? And, what do those messages look like coming from marketing? And I think a lot of companies try to set up a life cycle, but they don't think it through from beginning to end, and the same messaging, the same feel, the same look. Can you imagine? You guys just helped us build that whole Tainment campaign. So we get somebody in, that's the messaging we're giving them, and then all of a sudden they're like,
yeah.
Who knows where they go? We got them.
Yeah. But guys, we did an onboarding campaign for a client once, and I was great, we'll help you do the onboarding campaign. The reason they really needed this stuff was they had almost a 60-day period where there was a rep changeover from the sale to who took it over. For 60 days, there was nobody to talk to this client. And they're like, so we need onboarding to get there. I'm like, okay, I got that. We'll do it. But I think there's a bigger process issue you guys need to address. But I think that's what you're saying, Ray, too, right? It's not just marketing. Even though I'm putting a marketer in charge of the life cycle, it's the experience. Like, I need someone from sales to be there to answer questions, and it's got to be consistent with our messaging. And I think it's so overlooked. And it's the low-hanging fruit, right? For renewal, that's where the money comes from quickly.
And just, and I think one of the really good things that Ray set up at Microsoft and that we've also done here is, like, I've got somebody in product marketing that I'm talking to. I've got somebody on the engineering team that I'm talking to. I'm talking to the people that I'm talking to the sales guys. I'm talking to everybody. It's like, what are you guys hearing? What are you seeing? Where are we having problems? So that, when I'm building in the messaging and looking at the different personas, I then can say, okay, this is going to be a problem. I mean, but we need, it's still a life cycle. Like, what happens to them? Yeah, I mean, these customers have been customers for quite some time, and some are starting to churn. What does that process look like, and who touches them? What does that look like? So I still think there's lots of lessons learned around the customer experience. We've all tried to do it really, really well, but there always seems to be some little miss, depending on the company, depending on the personalities, depending on who you bring in, or turnover. Oh my God, talk just turnover. With COVID, losing so many people that, jumped after COVID's over and trying to get then that cadence back of like, who are we meeting with? What are we doing? What does the product look like?
But at least you're looking for it, right? It's there, you're looking for it, as opposed to, not knowing what you don't know, right? There's something there, you've got to look for it. You may not know exactly what it is until you analyze, but
That's the hardest part about being this old. You know it's a problem, and you know if you mention it, you'll get assigned it.
So that's our other big mistake. Just keep it a secret so you don't get the work.
Just send an anonymous email. I see these problems. Paula's busy.
Well, it's true, but you never get bored, and always there's something new to learn in marketing.
It's true.
I have to say, as an old dog, I gotta always learn new tricks of the trade. You gotta always keep learning and stay on top of the. Gosh, the technology is so crazy in marketing. It's great.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's something that I really wish I would have done more. I had a great leader example in Carrie that always was constantly, Carrie, you were always trying to figure out the newest thing and get on demos and learn all this stuff. And I was always like, oh.
She's still like that,
Show
Paula.
me the spreadsheet. Let me just run the company and let's be profitable. Let me talk to
the shiny new object.
Yes. Let me talk to the customers that are unhappy and fix it. You go squirrel.
I was thinking the same thing. Squirrel.
Squirrel.
I love it.